I'll go ahead and call us to order and declare that we have a quorum of 6 members present. Item C1, receive an update on the 2015 bond program. Dr. Ely.
Thank you, Mr. Harris, members of the board. We do regular updates on our school building projects, and here to update us on our current 2015 bond projects is John Hall, Executive Director for Facilities. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Dr. Ely. Mr. Harris, wow, that's loud. I thank you for this opportunity to give an update on the 2015 bond package tonight. I'm going to jump right into it and kind of move along, so if I need to slow down, y'all just give me the high sign here. Some general information on the 2015 bond was that it was passed in November of 2015 for a grand total of $135.9 million. Thanks to the good voters of College Station ISD out there. We appreciate that. And included recommendations at the time made by the Planning for Growth Committee, which did their work in the spring of 2015. We had 3 major campuses, new campuses included for construction, including intermediate school number 3, middle school number 3, and elementary school number 10, as well as some additional construction work at some of our intermediate and middle campuses, as well as some deferred maintenance, and you see all the corresponding values to the right there. In addition to that, we had other items included for technology, buses and vehicles, as well as some land acquisition. So all of that adds up to $135.9 million. So sequentially, some of the projects, I'll start off with the construction projects we've completed thus far. The first summer of 2016, right after the November 15 bond election passed, we tackled a couple of projects over at AMCMS and Oakwood. So I've got it on here for the athletics locker room edition. You might recall we pushed that through quickly. Did a bunch of work that summer, and you got a picture of the inside there, and then looking across from the practice field there as well. So very well received project. Got it just in the nick of time. Finished up for school to start. Right across the street over at Oakwood, we did some work over there as well. If you'll recall, the old front elevation was kind of in need of some sprucing up there, so we did that work over the summer of 16 as well, and created the interior vestibule kind of for parents and kids and everything to kind of come into the main portion of the building. You can see the little center section there that we created kind of a display panel, worked with technology with to get all that put together. Very impressive. Thank you. It really needed it too. It kind of freshened up the campus over there. One of the bigger projects that we've completed just recently, just before school started this year, was Pecan Trail Intermediate School, which was a really nice project there. You see an aerial photo of it. I'd love to drop those in. People like to see the driveways coming and going and all that good stuff. But you can see, just for perspective too, just off to the left of that picture is Greens Prairie Elementary School as well. So there's an aerial view of it. And here's one of the interior photos of the cafeteria area as we finished it all up. So came together really well. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from the public on this one. In addition to that, same summer that we were finishing that one, we were also, last summer, we were really, we did another project over at Oakwood Intermediate School to freshen up some of our interior spaces. You can see this is a picture of one of our corridors. We put new flooring, new tile, did a little paint over there, a few new lockers. And then the picture on the right, you'll see is a collaboration space. That's one of the things identified in the bond for creating kind of those flexible learning areas. That's where we turn 2 classrooms into one big collaboration space. Of course, we did the same thing over at the other intermediate school over Cypress Grove. You can see the picture on the left is one of our collaboration spaces there, where we turned a couple of classrooms into one large flexible learning area. And I just dropped in a picture of one of the restrooms there too, where we added a couple of those on those long wings of Cypress Grove, and I think that was very much appreciated as well, especially by the students. In addition to that, we did some work over Southwood Valley Elementary School. If you'll recall, we did the cafeteria area was getting pretty pretty, I'll say tired looking. So we've freshened up the space over there, put new flooring, redid our stage, did some new paint on the walls, got some nice racing stripes in there. So really freshened up that space a lot as well. So in addition to the ones we've completed thus far, we've got some significant projects that are still ongoing. The biggest one being Welborn Middle School, which, as you may recall, has a total project budget of over $51 million. So that's a big one. This was one that the school board approved back in October of 2016, and we are still in budget, and we are still behind schedule on that one. We do have a projected completion date window between August 6th and August 17th right now. So we're pressing hard to make that closer to the 6th than the 17th, but that's been yeah, looking out the window today and see all the rain, it just makes everybody in my office groan. But it will be ready for the first day of school on Monday, August 20th, which is a week sooner than we normally open it. But with this completion date so close to the first day of school, there's no doubt we're going to have a greater than normal number of punch list items. It's going to be a little more chaotic, a little rougher looking than what any of us are used to. But I'm claiming right now with a big gulp that we will have it ready in time for school to start. So Pepper Lawson does a great job with that work. So they're gonna get us there.
Can I ask you a couple of questions about?
Yes, sir.
Does that give us, if the 17th, that, am I seeing that right? So teachers wouldn't have the weekend to be ready on Monday?
What that means is that's the date that we would be anticipating getting our temporary certificate of occupancy from the city. We will start all the move-in activities for furniture and everything else prior to that with special permission from the city. We've already been talking to them about that. So that we're not going to be jammed up into having to do the whole thing over the weekend before school starts, which is we've had our hat off and talking to our friends at the city for many months over this, and they've been very, very cooperative, I might add.
And then activities, the trainings and things like that that the teachers go through, we have arrangements for them?
We will make arrangements.
Okay.
We do. Fortunately, we've got Julie Mischler as our principal over there, and I know she's very, very capable of making adjustments on the fly. So she might have to make some this round too.
Fair enough.
Here's a little aerial photo we've got at Welborn Middle School, and see if I can. Here we go. Just to give you a little perspective, this is Reuter Road right here. You can follow the cursor there. Just to kind of give you a little feel for the site, the parent traffic will be looping in here. This is always kind of the big question. And we've got this long, long queuing, double queuing space that goes all the way back to the back, loops all the way back up to the front, and then over before the students are dropped off at the front of the school, which gives us a long queuing space. Lots and lots of parents will be able to get off of the road, which is good for everybody in the whole area. So you can see, of course, the main building is in the center. This little driveway that hooks all the way out to 2154 is going to be for our buses and our staff. They'll come back over here and kind of park to this side of the building. And then, of course, you see the the big green square back there is our practice field. The one up a little bit closer is where our football field is going to be located with the track around it. This is our tennis courts up front. So, and a picture of the inside. This is just one of the photos from the inside of our cafeteria area. You can just kind of see some of the metal studs and all sorts of MEP rough end going on still. This was from about a month ago. So our other construction project still ongoing, of course, is River Bend Elementary School. That's the one that we have recently started. $26.9 million total project budget. School board approved that back in September, just a few months back. I am proud to say we are still in budget and still on schedule for that one. So with an anticipated completion date of February of 2019. So we've got about 1 year to go on that. So if I could only rob a few months off of that one and put it over to the middle school, but unfortunately it doesn't work that way. So we are about 15% complete with that project right now. And related to that, we had some work right across the fence from us that the Mission Ranch folks are working on for us. They are doing the sanitary sewer work that we'll be tying the school into. That work has now commenced. The deadline for completion of that work was October 15th, 2017. The Mission Ranch folks have looked that over and have given us a revised timeline now. And they're saying that everything, including the lift station, is going to be complete by spring of 2018. So then that's not going to get us into any kind of a squeeze or anything on the project overall. Here's an aerial view of that one to give you a reference. This is the long road in front of it right here. This is Holloman South. If you go all the way down, well, up to the top there, this is Rock Prairie where it kind of cuts over. So you can see where we've got a lot of the paving accomplished already, which kind of loops in this little serpentine path kind of around the site to drop off students here. This big muddy footprint right here is where the school is going to be sitting, and back on the Rock Prairie side is where it's going to loop back around for buses and staff parking on this side of the school. So, and all of these yellow lines right here that you're seeing is the same we're seeing right here. That's the poly that we've got wrapped around some of our grade beams. We're getting ready, and in fact, a few days ago poured our first major slab pour over there. So we've got a fellow by the name of John Morgan as our superintendent over there for Pepper Lawson, and is doing just a great job for us. So those are the main projects we have ongoing. We do have some upcoming this summer. We've got renovations to both of our middle schools, A&M Consolidated Middle School and College Station Middle School, which were approved last month in the January board meeting. And those are similar like we did at the intermediate schools. We're going to be opening up a new middle school, so that means this summer we can finally get in there to do some work on these middle schools that we'd like to do. And what we're going to be doing is pretty similar to the two middle schools. We're going to be doing a couple of collaboration areas. At AMCMS, we've got both of them on the back of the building with access to the back of the school with some covered patios. And so got a little floor plan of that. If you can orient yourself a little bit, the front office is right here. So if you're going in, that's kind of the center of the X. And so just off to the left right there is going to be one of our collaboration areas. With access through to the back of the building. We'll have an exterior patio right there. And then if you go down to the long corridor that heads kind of back towards the orchestra hall, this is the second, and you can see we'll be taking out the wall right here to open that space up, creating an exterior patio right there, and then tying in the sidewalks all together. And by the way, we will have a security fence along the back there too to kind of capture all of that for when we have students out back studying, doing their work. College Station Middle School, it's very similar actually. We've got two collaboration spaces. They're separated a little bit on either end of the building instead of both on the same side. And we will have a little extra work over there. We're doing some work by the receptionist area on this this school. And the floor plan for that one looks like this. You're coming into the front of the building off of Rock Prairie right there. This is the security vestibule at the front with a receptionist area. Well, this is the wall right across the front that we're extending all the way up to the ceiling deck just because it's open air right now and it's just really, really loud during class changes. So we're going to close that off to improve our acoustics for our team up front there. If you go down the first corridor, this direction, this is where we're going to be taking out one wall, opening that up for collaboration space and our outdoor patio here, with a fence on the end to create a safe and secure outside area on that end of the building. And if you go deeper into the building off this other corridor, we'll be creating something very similar for the other grade level right here, taking out the wall, creating the outdoor patio space and the security fence right there on the end. So it'll all be captured inside of a fence. In addition to that, we've got some deferred maintenance projects upcoming. The biggest one being also what was approved by the school board in January for South Knoll. That's a pretty good sized project. That's going to be basically the south half of the main building as well as the gymnasium building. And this will be for the installation of fire sprinklers in the last campus locations in the school district that still needed it. So we've been wanting to do this for a while. I'll be glad to check this one off the list. While we've got that end of the building all torn up, ceiling tiles torn out and everything else, we're going to go ahead and make some other upgrades while we're there for ADA access and restrooms. and go ahead and pick up new flooring, paint, tile, ceiling grid, that sort of stuff. The north half of the building is scheduled for the following summer, summer of 2019. So just a little quick floor plan of that. This is the front of the building. To orient yourself, this is kind of where you would enter the principal's office area. This is not what we're doing this summer in the front. We're doing the stuff in the back with this hatched-in area, the kindergarten wing, kind of through the cafeteria area, and then the whole gym building as well. Other deferred maintenance projects we've got upcoming in future years, not this coming summer, but we're going to be doing some roof repair at Consol High School. We've got a sump pump replacement due for Cypress Grove up underneath that building. We've got an ADA access ramp to our stage over at Rock Prairie that we're going to be picking up not this summer, but the summer of 19. As well as some various HVAC equipment replacement of old cooling and heating units kind of sprinkled around in the school district as well. So with that, that concludes my report. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have for me.
Thank you. Any questions?
I got a couple of questions on the College Station Middle School and the A&M Consolidated Middle School on the outdoor patio areas. How big,
Yes, sir.
How big a patio space is that?
Oh, I'd say they're probably 30 feet wide by about 20 foot out from the building, and part of it will be enclosed with a canopy as well. So we'll have a little bit of space under the sun, a little bit of space, that's protected from the elements.
I'd be actually interested to see some of the ones that we've done, and then also maybe do a field trip to Pecan Trail, because I haven't seen Pecan Trail. I don't know if anybody else has seen that. That might be something that I'd like to either do on my own or as a group.
Well, I'll say for those, especially for those exterior patios, we've got a one that's pretty new at Oakwood that we did from last summer, as well as Cypress Grove. So if you wanted to pop in, kind of look around the side of the buildings there, you can kind of see an example. It's going to be pretty similar to the ones we're doing at the middle schools, except for those are about twice as big and only one of them, if that makes sense. So we're splitting these off into two separate ones. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, we can set it up and whoever wants to go can go. Anybody else? Thank you very much. Okay, item C2, consideration, discussion, and possible action related to board operating procedures. Dr. Ely.
Mr. Harris, members of the board, would it be possible for us to go out of order and go to item 3 first? We grabbed the wrong set of these off the printer. I think Ms. Horn is getting the right ones of these for us right now. So,
Absolutely. Okay, let's table item C2 to come back to and proceed to item C3. Consideration, discussion, and possible action related to the annual enrollment review and report, FC Local, including but not limited to boundary adjustment process for elementary zones to accommodate the opening of River Bend Elementary in 2019, and options to alleviate enrollment capacity issues at College Station High School and A&M Consolidated High School. Dr. Ely.
we have them now. Since it's already on the table, we'll move on to item C3. So where we are with this, we brought to the board and for in the community back in December, we had our demographer, Templeton Demographics, come and give us a presentation over the next 10 years of enrollment projections for College Station ISD by campus, as well as they also talked with us about the potential effects of a charter school that will be coming into our school district. We also had Mr. Martindale give us a presentation on the, as mandated by board policy FC Local, looking at the next 5 years, looking at of enrollment capacities at our various campuses, looking at the differences in student composition at our secondary school campuses, and we talked about that all in December. We came back in January, last month, in our rescheduled meeting, and we shared some more information with you in regards to what a potential bond in 2018 might, how that might impact our INS, or interest in sinking debt service tax rate. We gave the same information about how that might look in a 2019 potential bond. And we also looked at the possibility of reapportioning high school students between the two comprehensive high schools and what that might do for the need for subsequent bond issues. We shared that information with the board. As I said, at our last meeting in January, we had about 10 minutes of conversation at the workshop at that time. I think where we find ourselves today is the time for a conversation about our various options that are available to us to address the capacity issues at our high schools. And really before we get into that, to talk about our elementary school process. Mr. Hall just talked about Riverbend Elementary, our 10th elementary school, and talk about the process that we have for that particular school. And with your indulgence, I guess I'd like to start the conversation with the elementary school, if that's okay. That pleases the board.
That's great, absolutely.
So, as you know, as Mr. Hall talked about, we are prepared to open Riverbend Elementary in August of 2019. We anticipate it'll be finished much earlier than that. With the opening of our 10th elementary school, we will need to adjust our boundaries, our elementary school boundaries. What makes this year and this boundary adjustment a little bit more problematic than maybe in previous ones is the unknown impact of the charter school that's opening up in our school district. International Leadership of Texas is opening up a K through 8 campus, and we don't know how many students they will take from us or Bryan ISD or any other ISDs around. And moreover, any students that would have gone to College Station ISD and go to this school, we don't know which of our elementaries they would come from. It has been our practice in the past to do work and boundary adjustment in the spring, almost a year and a half before it opens, and have a decision made by the board about a year before the new school opens. It is our thinking that it would be better to do the work for the elementary school boundary adjustment actually this fall 2018, so that we can have an understanding of what the impact or potential impact of any enrollment changes might be. We would hate to make some boundary adjustment decisions in the spring and have an unanticipated effect on our elementary schools, or a disproportionate effect at one or two of our campuses, and have us to do the work over again, if that makes sense. So while it is a little bit shorter on the time frame than we have done in the past, it would still give families months of a head start of knowing what their students' boundaries would be for the 2019 school year. So our recommendation would be to do the boundary adjustment in the fall of 2018 for the elementary schools, with the implementation for fall 2019 with the opening of Riverbend. So I'd love to have some conversation about that with the board, though.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's one thing we definitely know we do need to do is rezone for elementary schools, because we're going to have a new school, and we need to draw an area to provide some students for that school. I think what you propose makes a lot of sense to me, but I want to hear what you all think and hear your thoughts on it, and see if there's any concern about compressing our time frame from what we traditionally do.
So when at the end of the day are we going to have numbers that we are comfortable to move forward with in terms of talking about that rezoning? I mean, is that like September we're comfortable with?
Probably early September we'll know who we've got in our schools. Yes,
So we would turn around and rezone October-ish?
probably September, October.
Or decide, obviously not rezone at that point, but, okay. So normally we would be done prior to the summer, so we'd have a full year. And what we're basically saying is we're going to give, people still have 10 months regardless, right? So,
Our past practice has been to do the work in the spring, hit pause over the summer as everybody goes, we're out of school, come back and make a report to the board, usually in August, and then have the board make depending on the nature of the boundary adjustment, either approve them in September or October.
okay.
And so what we'd be actually starting the process much later and probably accelerating the process, going a little quicker. So hopefully we can have a decision by fall. would be my thinking right now.
So everything seems like positives. Is there a downside to that other than the fact that people won't know until later?
That it has been our practice to give folks about a year's head start on that, or that things would be changing. It would be less than that. When you look at high growth districts, other places, they don't necessarily give as much warning as that. Some do, some don't. That's just kind of been our practice.
I like that practice. I mean, that's the obvious negative to it, but God, it sure seems that the bigger negative would be going ahead with a complete unknown of who's going where. So, I mean, I would be for it. I mean, I hate that we'd be losing 2 or 3 months for the families, but at the same time,
Well, 5 or 6.
5 or 6.
Yeah.
Well, if we make the decision,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know you didn't say when it
No,
would
that's
be.
true.
If we're
They
doing-
wouldn't normally present it until the fall regardless.
correct.
Oh, okay.
And the board
Right.
usually adopts in September or October.
Okay, I got you.
And when I think about it, you're right. But what if we did it in the spring and people then make adjustments to their lives based on that? Then we get numbers vastly different than we expected. And then we have to change it after they've already acted in reliance on what we did.
It seems like a no-brainer to me, so.
I say we take the time and make sure we try to get it right first time.
Okay.
I like making decisions on known facts as much as we can.
Hope will be that nobody signs up to go to the charter school. If they choose the right school, then that's probably the way it'll turn out, so.
Thank you,
Say
Dr.
that out
Wesson.
loud? I'm sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Wesson.
Thank you very much for that. Anybody else on, I mean, I think tentatively, I mean, I don't know that we have to, you're going to want the definite direction today, yes?
At the end of our discussion of everything, it'd be great if we had some
Okay.
definite direction. You guys can handle it however you see fit.
Okay.
Mrs. Nolan, I think, has something to say.
So my only question is, what does the process look like? And I know that whenever y'all talked about the FC local, you put some things in there that talked about what the new boundary adjustment process is going to look like, that it wouldn't necessarily look like what it has in the past. Am I making sense?
Yep.
So, I mean, what is it going to be for, I mean, what are we thinking for the elementary? What kind of community input are we going to be receiving, and how, and what's that time frame going to be?
Well, I think under the policy, we as a board can make it what we want it to be. And we built in enough flexibility that we can go kind of what I'll call the old way, or what I'm going to call the new way. And we can do either or and mix or match. It just depends on what we think's appropriate to get the best outcome for the community. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think at some level, the administration might want for elementary schools, because you have so many different groups involved, and it's because we have so many more areas or zones, we have more schools, that they like the idea of the community input. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong. So that process may look a little more like the old one, but it doesn't have to. We could do what we've talked about doing under kind of the new approach of directing them, go look at the issues, dig into it, bring us a few options, tell us pros and cons, and then we'll wrestle with it. So that's what I have. It's going to be whatever we all want it to be.
I think we're going to push it off to the fall. I mean, the reality of getting I really don't want to go through why we came up with this new policy to begin with, which was the fact that larger community group of 40 people, the ability to make a decision is really limit it. Now, I think that's an easier decision at the elementary school level in reality. But if we're going to accelerate that process, that's a process that takes substantially longer. But I agree with Mr. Harrison that the policy is open enough for that to take place. I mean, one of the advantages, I think, to the new policy is that all discussions about a recommendation are had out in the open, right? It's not just, we had this big committee who worked behind closed doors and now here's this. There's a little bit more conversation out in front of everybody in terms of how that process took place. But
Well, and the issues that we wrestle with. I think your concern is valid in the fact that we don't know what that looks like exactly. However, I don't think that we're looking, I don't think there'll be any less public input. I think that it'll be more transparent because, you know, they'll have an opportunity to say, as they do now, to address us. So I don't think there'll be, I don't see there being less community input. If anything, I see that they will have a better, the entire community will have a better understanding if they so choose.
Okay. I just want to make sure that, you know, I think it's smarter to do it in the fall as well. Most definitely. So we have all the information that we need. I just want to make sure that we're giving ourselves enough time also to do that.
If we do it in the fall, it gives us a lot of opportunity to talk about what exact process do we want. We don't have to decide that this evening.
Right,
We have
right.
plenty of time to talk about that and have the administration bring the board, you know, some draft timelines of what that could look like with our various options that are available to us on the policy.
So it gives us more time to think about what that could look like.
Right. Anything else on the elementary? Or is that what you need
That is at
General-
least that's what we need for right now.
for now? Okay.
So that was an easy one. The bigger issue, as far as a more complex issue that we have before us right now, is dealing with the overcapacity issues at College Station High School. Just to remind those who might be listening or here in the room may have not heard this for the first before, but recall that when we built College Station High School and it opened in 2012, we built phase one with a core capacity for 2,400 or more students. And what that means the hallways are wide enough, the commons areas, the cafeteria, those types of things. The backbone, the infrastructure is big enough for that. We did classroom space for what at the time we thought would be 1,800 students. Right now we have just under 2,000 students in the school right now, and no portable buildings. We are expecting growth, as you saw from our demographer in the school, and we are planning on putting some portable buildings at College Station High School to help for next school year. Nevertheless, the plan all along was to be, at some point, we need to go back and do phase two of College Station High School, which at the time of building was contemplated to be classroom space to accommodate an additional 600 students, a third gymnasium, and a black box theater. Obviously, before we go into any type of bond situation, before that, we would have a community group together. The board would discuss it and determine exactly what the scope would look like for a phase two of that building. But that was what we planned going into this. So as we sit here, as we looked at last month and the month before that, we have some real capacity issues with our current classroom space available at College Station High School. Conversely, on the other side of town, A&M Consolidated High School has a redesigned capacity of about 2,350 students. And so right now, the number of students at Consolidated are a little bit over 1,700. So there is capacity that's available at A&M Consolidated High School. So as we look at capacity issues at CSHS, we know that we have an option of going to the voters for additional authorization to sell bonds for phase two of that school. Last month, we threw out some options of what a 2018 bond might look like and a 2019 bond might look like for that project and some additional ones. And we also have the option of redrawing attendance boundaries to effectively move students from college, a net number of students from College Station High School to Consol to take advantage of the capacity that's available there. Maybe other options that I would love to talk about tonight. That's what we have before you, and I think the time is for us to have a rich conversation about the direction that we need to be going.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure how you all want to go through this or get started, but one thing that I kind of want your thoughts on, we talk about some of the options. I mean, I think in general, our discussions have kind of crystallized down to a couple of different options. But I think for the sake of completeness, it's worthwhile to talk about some other ones, even though, I mean, some of them are silly, quite frankly, but it's kind of the old ask and answer thing in the law, that we can then respond to the community or to individuals that approach and say, yeah, that didn't gain much traction with the board. And I think that might be worthwhile to go through. And I'll give you an example. The idea of, well, we could completely reinvent the wheel here, and we could talk about whether or not we want to do a 9th and 10th grade campus and an 11th and 12th grade campus. I mean, we're not stuck. I mean, we can always change course. Now, he's about to have a heart attack. I personally am not in favor of that, but I do think, I have heard that proposed as an option, and I have had constituents and members of our community come to me and say, why don't we do that? And up until this point, I guess I can say, yes, the community has looked at various options, and that being one of them. And I know in my time here, we've made the transition, and I can remember quite distinctly some discussions in a community group, I think it was long-range planning,
Long-range educational planning.
where we talked about one big school, if you will, or collection of students versus the split, and that it's basically opportunity, and that's what you get is more opportunities for the kids and a better learning environment. But and I'm not saying we should go through all the various options in detail, but I do think it's worthwhile and to see if any of these have any traction, if you want any more knowledge or information on them before we make a decision. Now, I can tell you my thought is we probably will not, because we've all been wrestling with these, and I know that we've addressed them or hit them at some point. I mean, even the idea of, we joke, odd number houses go to one high school, even number to the other. I mean, it's silly, but it is an option. Thoughts?
I think it's important that we do talk about historically a little bit, because I said on that long-range planning seems like forever ago. However, it was really important to the community for these kids to have opportunity, and we looked at some school districts that had chosen to be one giant high school, and some of those have now gone to 2 high schools because they too want opportunity for their kids. And we talk about, we've got security on our mind. It's a little easier to have security with less students. I think that's weighs on everyone's mind. And when you have a large entity, that sometimes that's, difficult to manage a large group of teenagers. And that was brought up back then, not so much as security, but the fact that managing a large group of teenagers can sometimes be challenging, and that the smaller schools was what we were looking at, including the elementary schools. We talked a great deal about the elementary schools, that we did not want 1,000 kiddo campuses. That was important at that time too. So the decision was made that we wanted to have opportunity, and certainly we have given opportunity to these kids. I mean, my goodness, look at, you know, what they bring back in terms of awards. I would hate to see, we might have some of those awards, but we wouldn't have it at 2 campuses like we do now. I mean, it's just phenomenal to me that both campuses have come back with huge awards across the board, and I appreciate that. I appreciate you know, having some smaller classrooms. Although as we get larger, you know, we do see some of the larger classroom sizes, which, again, I think, you know, I hear that as much as anything. Sometimes when these campuses get big, is the large classroom sizes, and they want smaller classroom sizes and individualism and all those kinds of things. And in order to do that, I think, you know, we really have to think about whether we want to go back to some huge monstrosity. I think that ship sailed, personally, but I'm up for discussion on that if everyone else thought that was a great idea. As far as the 9th and 10th grade and 11th and 12th grade campuses, there's a couple of things I think about that. I would think that the transportation issue back and forth to those campuses would be very difficult. I've had kids that, and I know around this table, with the exception of our newest member, you've had kids that, because of the choices that they make, they may be at a different level than maybe the other kids, whether either direction. And it would be difficult to have to transport, in my opinion, and we're just adding to safety and security, having to transport kids back and forth, trying to get them to their classrooms on the other campus. While it's not that far, I would hate to see that. You know, I also think about the leadership that 11th and 12th graders provide to 9th and 10th grade students. I went to a 9th grade campus where we were in charge of the 7th and 8th graders. That is a great model, perhaps. Perhaps it's not sometimes, because they're awfully young to be leading that group. But I do think that 9th graders and 10th graders learn a lot from our juniors and seniors, and they somewhat police themselves at times in that situation. When I work with them in the summer, I really rely on my older class, you know, my juniors and seniors to help with the younger, because when I work with them, they're 7th to 12th graders, and the way that they conduct themselves and provide that leadership is something that we as adults sometimes can't do. It really does make a difference. So those are my thoughts on that particular issue. I'm not saying that it's silly. It's not. I mean, it's a model. I just think for those reasons that I wouldn't be jumping in for that model.
I think it just goes.
No, please, you. No,
I think it just goes against why we split into 2 comprehensive high schools to begin with. You know, which happened pretty close to after we got here, and you know, I write enough letters at this point for kids trying to get into university and admissions, and knowing that grades and test scores are important, but more and more across the board, they need leadership opportunities and different experiences and all of those things. And I think the bigger you get, the less opportunities you have. And you know, for me, that was one of the big reasons why we went to the model we went to begin with. And I had not heard that. Nobody has approached me with that option. But certainly, you know, I think people don't come to College Station to go to a 5,000, 6,000 student high school. And I don't see a 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th campus any different than that. To me, it's the same thing. So, I mean, it seems like a non-starter to me, but everybody's.
well, I was just simply going to say, no one's approached me about that either. I've read a couple people mad on TexAgs wanting that, but you know, they want to be the next. I know
Don't do
it's a
that.
good policy. It's a good policy not to, but I just don't think we're the next Allen or Southlake or the Plano model. Again, I don't think it's silly either but it's not the impression I have. It's who we are, who we even want to be. I, for one, who've had three kids go through high school, well, not all the way through, but I appreciate the opportunities that they're afforded that they may not have had if there was 5,000 students there, 4,000.
I agree, it's a no-starter for me, just for the lack of opportunities for the kids.
Yeah, that's my thinking as well. And you point out, I mean, there's a reason those things are valued at colleges or scholarship committees. It's because they really do a good job of helping us accomplish what we're trying to do, which is make these students good community members. And I like what we're doing. I think the success speaks for itself. I mean, state championships in sports or runs in the playoffs, 13 National Merit Scholars from our schools. I mean, all these student recognitions we get to do, which is awesome. I mean, that's just what we're doing and why. Unless anybody else has anything to say, that's it. But I think it's helpful now. We can say, yes, we talked about it, we looked at it. It's not who College Station ISD is. It's not what we want for our students. I've had a list of these, and again, some of them are silly. I'm going to just flip through them, and then I'm going to get to what I think are our real options. And again, I'm happy to do this any other way. If y'all have something you want to talk about or do, let's go. Okay, talked about silly things like odd number, even number. We've talked about. No, I got it. Somebody said, well, why don't you just have open enrollment or let people self-select where they want to go? I don't favor that myself because I think it would be a planning nightmare and open us up to a whole different set of issues that are counter, again, to what we're about and what we're trying to accomplish with our students. But it is an option. And other districts sometimes follow that, but anybody want to do that or talk more about that?
It's gotten them in a whole lot of trouble, some of those districts.
It has. Okay, doing nothing, that's always an option. Not a good one, but I don't think we're there.
Well, but I don't want to completely take that. I mean, doing nothing means more and more and more portable buildings outside of College Station High School while we have a lot of room left to console. So to me, doing nothing is an option, right? I mean, we can say we're just going to let it grow out and we'll build our new wing at some point. But given that, I think that's the one thing that surprised me the most. I don't know if it was the meeting or the meeting before, but the notion of once that bond's passed, it's still 3 years before we have kids in seats in that new wing at College Station High School. And it doesn't take a whole lot of looking at those numbers to say we're going to have 20 portable buildings sitting outside a relatively brand new high school if we do nothing. But doing that is an option, right? I mean, throwing up portable after portable after portables, I mean, to me, it does not sound like a pleasant thing, but it is an option.
Yeah, and to me, doing nothing it's almost a discussion of timing. Because if you do nothing, at some point, I don't know this, but I think the fire marshal would show up and say, you've got to do something.
Yeah, I was going to say, doing nothing is still something because you've got to have those portable buildings. I mean, we're still paying for portable buildings.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, so nothing is really not nothing because those students
Right,
are
well,
still coming.
We have portable buildings and the fact that the second that new wing is built, we're over capacity.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
yeah, that's right.
really what we're still are going to have temporary buildings even with a brand new wing at that point. So doesn't
That's true.
sound overly appealing to me, but
On a related note, as we talk about the portable buildings, how does that involve with security? Your you're gonna have to get some kind of security. So I mean, we're limited in that itself, right?
So obviously, kids would be having to go outside and back in during class changes. So I have not looked at a schematic as to where they would be and whether they could be behind fencing. My understanding is we would put them behind fencing. So at least there would be a fence barrier between where our kids are in the portables and, just the rest of the parking lot and the outdoors. And so I don't know if they're nestled up in between where's John here?
He's this way. He's this
Right
way.
behind you.
Directly behind you.
So would they be in between the academic and the athletic swings? Yeah. So we could separate them through fencing would be one thing that we can do. But again, when you're going outside and inside, just think about tonight, you're also subject to the elements. So. And you have to go inside every time you have to go to the restroom, or the nurse or the counselor.
At this point, security's a little bit more important than the rain to me right now.
Yeah. So it seems to me we're unless someone else has other options to talk about, we're down to either expanding capacity with bonding or moving students through rezoning.
The other one that people have talked to me about is, why don't you just open the third high school?
Well, yeah, and that's
So-
another way of saying expanding capacity, but you're right.
But building a whole nother school, bonding for a whole nother school, teachers,
Right.
sports facilities, everything. I mean, that is another option. And I've actually had quite a few people ask me why we don't just build the third.
You tell them you had 100 million reasons why
I
not.
was gonna say,
Yeah, I did pretty much.
140.
I just started adding up, and it just in my head even. And then, well, we have 600, so then we have, what are at our intermediate, or at our middle schools right now? That's how many we would have in each high school. So it'd be tiny high schools then, for how long? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's another option. and
It
it's
is,
one
you're
that-
right.
It
I
is.
mean, we're talking about
It is,
options.
no, I think it's a good, I mean,
So,
I'm sitting here thinking, it's hard for me to say, let's go spend $40 million on a wing when we have excess capacity at Consol. The notion of asking for, going to the voters and saying, we'd like $140 million for a brand-new high school when we still have room for 900 kids at our other two. 900 is probably not right, but whatever the number is.
6 to 7.
I mean, that's just a,
well, and Geraldine brings up a good point. That's just building the building. That's not even the cost of the operations.
staffing and operating in the future. I mean,
You've got to have capacity to run those buildings too, so.
Yeah, so to me, the two options that we're basically considering are that, not just the third high school, but bonding to expand capacity or moving kids. And I will tell you, in the numbers that we saw, the thing that really jumped out to me was the one graphic where it showed us asking for a bond if we went with the bond route or didn't move students. We would ask for a bond to expand CSHS, and then it would be time based on capacity there to ask for the bond for the third high school. Both of those prior to us using the capacity we have at Consol right now. That suggested to me that the thing to do is use the capacity we have, which means moving kids and rezoning.
I think that was the
Thoughts?
slide that really spoke to me, is that even though we would try to ask for a bond, I mean, I really do hear people that's another side of this, is that if you got capacity sitting over there and then you come ask me for a bond, I'm not in. And there's more than a couple of people who have told me that too, while we're looking at all these options. But that slide spoke volumes to me.
Pretty snazzy.
Yeah, good. We're still not
well,
helping.
by the time it's done, you're over capacity there. That's really what it boils down to for me. I think that's when that slide hit me the most, and I'm not sure it hit me until I really took it home and really started thinking about it. But the notion that even if we said, let's go up for this bond in November, 3 years from now, the second that building is complete, it's completely full. And
Putting portables
just,
again.
I don't know how you do that. It just doesn't make that much sense to me.
You just be leaving those portables there too.
Well, again, the fact that there's a ton of portables out there, and well, I don't know how you're gonna have to build that wing on top of where you're gonna put those portables to. So, I mean, that's just it's not a good situation. So, I mean, I guess I sit at home and I, kind of run through all these things in my brain, and I get really upset that we're a fast growth district and we're having all these problems. But then I go back to that conference we go to every year, listening to those other districts having a different set of problems. And these are really good problems to have. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to have a vibrant, thriving, growing community, and that's what we've got. But that creates issues, and this is going to be one of them.
I think the only other thing I'd like to say is that, even though this spoke volumes to me, it's clearly not my favorite thing to do, to have to rezone. And, if I could think of some other way to do this, I would have thought of it, because it's hard on all of us. It's hard on the community. It's hard on us. It's hard on the kids. It's hard on everyone. So I think, but the fact of the matter stands that we have capacity at one school, and I really, I tell people this all the time. I really get up in the middle of the night thinking of things, and nothing has come to me in the middle of the night on this issue. So, not that that's the end all,
Agreed.
but I'm
And
just
that
saying.
was part of the exercise on the front end, see if anybody had any other great ideas.
You've got a list of 10 options right there, and none of them are good. I mean, none of them.
Right.
I mean, I totally agree. It's, it is painful, and it is painful. Yeah, and the amount of time I think we probably all sit around thinking about this, for that magic, I don't know, some magic potion to make this make it work. But I mean, the one thing that I have been approached about by far the most is not a 9th grade campus. It's not building a third one. It is a massive concern from taxpayers about paying $40 million when we already have space. And I agree with that. I mean, I hear that, and I go, and I think everyone else, hears that and go, yeah, why would we do that? Well, the why is because we don't want to move kids.
I think that's well put. And let me add to it a little bit if I may.
Absolutely.
I agree with you. That is the thing I have heard more than anything. And part of it's the environment right now at the state level. There is a big push for, I would say, cutting taxes. What I try to do in this role, and I know you all do too, it's look, we're put here to try to be efficient. Sometimes we have to spend money. I mean, we just went through a 2015 bond update. That was spending a lot of our community's money. And we're members of this community too. And I think our community values education. It values what our district is doing for the kids in the community. But I think they expect us to use their money wisely and to be efficient. And that's what I've heard, that you don't come ask us for additional funds when you have unused capacity now. And you said it's the reason that it's even causes a little bit of angst is because it's hard. And I agree with that. And to me, the hard thing, I'm just tell you straight up, my kids, I mean, they go to Consol, and it's not hard for me to ask anyone to come to Consol. It's a fantastic school. I mean, quite literally, I am betting my kids' future on it. And I'm ecstatic with how it's going. The thing that's hard is asking people to change. And that's where we are. And it's not something that any of us up here would do lightly, because I know what that means in households and as people sit down for dinner. I mean, it's difficult when you ask anyone to change. And that's why we have these discussions and why we're angsting. But to me, from a fiscal standpoint, it's pretty clear what we need to do.
No, this may be a crazy, goofy question, but, I mean, we talked about open enrollment, and we said that that's silly. But,
I don't know if we said it was silly, did we?
well, that
Not what we want to do.
Nightmare. But
nightmare,
it's-
okay, nightmare. And asking people to change is the hardest part. That's what we don't want to do, especially when we just asked them to change a couple years ago, right? But this is almost like open enrollment. If you gave people the choice, since we have one high school that's overcrowded and one that's under, if you gave people the choice first to move to Consol.
Yeah, and we
I mean, I
we
don't,
kind of do that now with transfers.
right, well, with the,
We go through a transfer process. There must be reasons to transfer, and there are a set number of reasons too. So it's certainly less than just you get to choose which high school you'd like to attend.
I got on there incentivize, and I don't know what that is, but if there's some kind of written down, again, that's,
I like it. They get a T-shirt.
the different
Kidding.
color.
I'm kidding.
with a
No, I
different
I
color.
like it. I like it.
I don't know where that's headed, but there's,
No.
Well, I mean, I want to undersell the fact that we kind of do have open enrollment already within reason, in that we've built two comprehensive high schools to be equal, with the exception of some career and technology programs that are only allowed at either other high school. And if you want to be a part of those programs, you've got the opportunity to go to the other high school in order to join those programs.
But don't you have to go to your zoned high school your freshman year?
That is how we do it, correct.
Well, they wouldn't be taking those courses, though, until
They take prerequisite courses their freshman year, and then they apply to be a part of the three programs that are exclusively at College Station, or the three that are exclusively at Consol.
we work hard to make sure that these two comprehensive high schools are equal in almost every respect, with the exception of those programs. And so the notion of there is no need to have, outside of those programs, to me, there's no need for open enrollment, other than the fact that maybe one is over capacity and one is under. But
Well,
Not sure that
not to
really-
mention, you would need, I'm just throwing a number out there, but you'd need 200 kids to decide that. That's a lot of kids to say,
and that would also have to provide their own transportation.
right.
I just know that when people are given choice and they're able to make that choice, I mean, I know, I'm going off on a tangent.
Well, it's not to say we couldn't do that on top of it.
Right.
I mean, we could loosen our transfer rules.
But it would only be one way.
It would only be one way, yeah.
It's not totally a choice.
Do you know of any districts that do that?
Right.
That allow movement in one direction?
Not off the top of my head. I know Garland ISD is one that has choice open enrollment for based on capacity at their high school level, but they're the first one that popped into my mind. But just one way only choice, not that I'm aware of.
Right, but if you've got capacity issues, you can't really have a two-way choice, can you?
If the idea for the choice were not for choice, but to address capacity, then no, you could not.
Right, yeah,
If the idea of choice is for choice, you could.
yeah, okay, exactly.
Anybody else? You want to weigh in?
Well, Mr. Schaefer brought some of these ideas up at our last meeting, and the administration spent some time talking about incentivizing or programs that perhaps that we could do at A&M Consolidated that might bring some kids over there. We talked about the International Baccalaureate Program, which Bryan ISD has at Bryan High School, and as we looked at it, it takes 2 years to ramp up that program to be able to do that. International Baccalaureate has a larger number of kids in the freshman and sophomore, but those numbers dwindle as you get on through the program because it's very rigorous. Honestly, we felt like we would be taking kids from the advanced placement track to go into IB. They wouldn't be coming from somewhere else. And we have a pretty rich advanced placement at both of our high schools. And we feel like we just wouldn't see a number of kids materialize through that. We looked at, different career and technology programs. We thought about, well, is there a program that has so much interest that we would put it at AM Consolidated and not offer it at College Station? We take those, basically uproot the kids in that program and move them to Consol. And one, we thought about the process of just uprooting kids in a particular program and what that might do for them. And then we thought about the numbers. And I think it was Mrs. Barrett who said, well, we're looking for 200 kids. I mean, that's the number we threw out there. I don't know if it's 175. I don't know if it's 250. I don't know what the real number is. But it's a sizable amount. And we could not, in our time spent, we spent a sizable time talking about it. We couldn't think of a program that would incentivize enough that amount of movement in our thinking.
One of the things I also meant on incentivize is possibly, not, I feel bad because I don't know the answer to this, but like on dual credit, do the students pay a portion of that?
Yes, students pay a portion of that right now.
My thing, one of the things I'm just thinking on top of my head is maybe if it's at Consol that they don't have to pay.
So with dual credit, that is something that is incentivizing, if you will, students to attend College View High School. That's one of the main differences between our comprehensive high school and our choice high school, College View, is that while at Consol and College Station High School, you have the opportunity to take up to 12 dual credit hours your senior year. You get to take between 24 and 33 hours your junior and senior year at College View. So we kind of have employed that already for how we design the academic program there. But I see what you're kind of getting at.
That's not a whole lot of money, is it?
No, but I mean, it's cheaper than building a school.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't think anybody's talking about building a new school.
No, I mean, just for, I mean, even if you gave me $1,000 scholarship, I mean, for down the road, I mean, it's, at the end of the day, that's gonna be cheaper than 40 million.
Yeah.
And again, I'm
You're still going to spend that 40 minutes at some point anyways, no matter what, so.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I think it's I'll keep turning that off, but. It just, part of me says, how much incentive do we need to send people to a nationally recognized, high-quality education high school? We're just fortunate that we have both, and it's just is what it is. So, it's 2 excellent schools.
I think that's a great point, is that we're not asking somebody to go somewhere that's not nationally recognized.
no, but I think the deal is, as I mentioned last time, there's a cost, not a financial cost, of having one particular student spend an hour more a day in transportation and other schools don't. I mean, other students don't. So, I mean, there is not just a financial cost, there's a time cost. I think that's what I struggle with.
Yeah, but between the two high schools, what is the mileage on that?
Again, it depends on,
3.0?
Between the two schools? I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, but between between the two high schools is, to me, minimal. That's just my opinion.
I think that is, yes, I agree that's minimal, even if you drop a circle and put it around one of the high schools. I mean, you're still, I still don't think we're solving a problem. We're still going to continue having growth from the south part of town, and more people are going to continue to have to drive to Consol.
No, I think I hear what you're saying, and I think what you're talking about is if we do decide to rezone or move kids, that gets down into the, who do you move? And how do you do that? And I absolutely think that drive time is a factor. I mean, it's one of many factors that we consider, and I think we always have. It's just how much weight do you put on it, what makes more sense, and it's kind of a complicated analysis of who do you put where. But I think that's where that factor comes in, as opposed to, are we talking about asking for a bond, or are we talking about moving kids at that fork in the road? Thoughts? I mean, I'm hearing most people kind of say.
I think we're gonna have to do both. I mean, we're gonna have to do a boundary adjustment, and then in a couple years, I mean, we're gonna have to figure out when we need to go for the bond as well.
No, I think you're right.
So,
I'm sitting here.
Two completely separate but yet
right,
interconnected things.
right.
I mean, to me, we've been talking about 1819 versus 1920. You know, I look at those two options and I say, I like 1819 because I like being able to go to people and tell them we need a new bond and it's not going to raise your taxes. But at the same time, the truth is, I think we're good stewards. We don't really need that money as that early. I mean, maybe we decide we do, but it'd be nice to say this bond's going to cost you 2 cents, but I've already given you 8 cents back.
The following year.
The prior 2 years, right? So, I mean, to me, I don't see how we get around rezoning for the high schools, period, regardless of whether we do a bond now or whether we do in 18 or whether we do a bond in 19. The problem is still there under either scenario. And we can't push the bond off that much farther with either one of those two decisions either. I mean, even if we decide, unless we turn around and say we want to rezone 400, 500 kids to Consol, you're not pushing off that bond for College Station High School that long. You've got a 3-year window before kids can be sitting in that building. You can't just say, we're going to rezone a whole bunch and then now we're going to put this bond off for 3 or 4 years. That's not going to happen. So, I mean, to me, 19 is, you look at it from a 3-year window, it's almost as far out, I think, as we can push it, even with the numbers that we had on the board saying we're going to move 200 kids.
Here we're talking about 2021 for the bond.
Yeah, I think you
if
do.
we
You get to push it off a little bit, but yeah, you're right. I mean, if our growth
It's not gonna make a
continues,
giant difference one way or the other.
we're going to have one and then the other. I mean, the question is, I mean, we've had a capacity issue presented to us now. What do we do? I mean, assuming the administration wants some direction to start moving forward, what do we tell them to do? Do we tell them start getting a bond ready, or do we tell them we're going to move kids? And then we adjust. I mean, to me, I've heard some good things tonight. I mean, if we tell them, hey, let's move some kids, then the question becomes, well, how many? And I think what factors into that are, okay, what do the transfer policies look like? What about programming options or incentives, or, because those things can be used maybe to mitigate how many you change in the line, which lessens the impact to some extent. But I mean, that's our choice. What do we tell them to go do?
We've all said we have to move kids tonight,
That's what I think.
as painful as it is.
And then know that then the question becomes timing of that. And, the capacity being what it is, and it starts to be a question of how soon do we do it? When do you make it effective? What does your grandfathering policy look like? I mean, we've been through this either on the board, or I know you were on that committee, so you got to see it up close and personal. probably more than, than most.
Dr. Ely, have we said anything that shocked you?
No, I mean, these are the things that we have to wrestle with. We have to talk about the taxing capacity, the bonding capacity. We have to talk about the real effect that it has on our community and on our parents and our students when we enter into talks about moving kids around, especially high school kids. No, I can certainly see where we're going. I'd like to weigh in perhaps, if this is a good point,
I think it's a great point.
to,
Me too.
if the will of the group is to move forward with a readjustment of the high school boundaries, I would like to talk about a scenario as far as timeline goes that would cause no current high school kids to have to move. And that would be, if it's the board's pleasure, to do the boundary adjustment work this spring of 2018, and get that done spring, early summer, soon. Get that work done and out of the way with new zones.
We're in the spring.
As
Like
in
right now.
as in upcoming in the next few months. With an implementation of 2019. And here's why. This year's freshmen right now, next year, when they don't take effect, would be sophomores. The year after that, in 2019, 2020, would be juniors. I think it would be our recommendation that juniors and seniors be allowed to grandfather in this particular, if we go through this particular method. So nobody who is a current high school student would have to make a move. Does that make sense?
Yes, but a current eighth grader.
I'm gonna get to eighth grade. in
Oh,
just
I'm sorry. Okay, he's on a roll.
So I'm going slow because there's grades and years and everything. So I was one
You're
of the slow
talking to
ones.
us as
Okay.
well.
Right. Some remedial work needed.
Yeah, I'm writing it down so I can follow.
If the board makes the determination of what the new zones will be in spring of 2018, now, ostensibly. Current year eighth graders going into their ninth grade year next year, if their neighborhood has to move, they know it already. They would have the option to transfer to the school where their neighborhood is moving to, so they don't have to move during high school. They could choose to go to their zone school for their freshman year and then change when the zones change for their sophomore year, but they wouldn't have to. In a sense, it's the opposite of grandfathering. You're allowing somebody to jump start to their new campus.
Choice.
Okay, that's just brilliant. I like it.
I like
do
that.
too.
Okay, were you not finished? I'm sorry.
No, that
wanted
is,
to let you know you were
that is
brilliant.
ostensibly it. Again, it's putting implementation out into 2019, but for a really good reason. It's not disrupting any current high school
Yeah.
kids, and it's giving options to our current eighth grade kids.
The only thing we'd have to deal with at that point is transportation
Yes.
for that 1 year.
So that's a good question. Would transportation
yeah,
be provided?
That's
for
one of the
those
things,
that
that was
choose-
one of those things we would need to work out.
That's my incentivize.
there it is. Incentivized choice.
Transportation.
Yeah, I think that's, I like that. I can tell you, not moving kids who are in a high school to the different high school is important, I think. Having two, I mean, they build their sense of place and home and, or, you know, kind of who they are and all that. So I like that you have an idea to keep us from having to do that. I like that a lot, actually.
And 2 years ago, that was the feedback we got the most. Or maybe not the most, but it was,
Oh, yeah.
yes. the
Grandfathering to allow
grandfathering the
fresh to not move. Yeah.
And this at least gives them the option. Okay.
So as you've thought through that, have you thought about, okay, because they're currently doing their scheduling, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so,
nothing takes place for 2018, so there's no changes.
okay, because
for
you're
next year.
doing 29, but that's the, I'm thinking, I had to write it down, hang on one second.
And I've got a timeline if you need to use mine.
Graders will know.
Basically just doing the work this spring, and it gets implemented in 2019. So everybody's going to their school that they've been planning on going to for next year.
I need to drop one too.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No,
Oh, okay, well, yeah, I'll just throw this out there. If, I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna throw this out there without everyone getting mad at me.
Who's everyone?
Well, you. And I just trying to process this thing through it, in front of a lot of people is kind of a scary deal. If we are adjusting the boundaries and moving kids, and every time we use that phrase, I just cringe. But I mean, it's just fact. It's just fact. You know, we're in the middle of we're just talking about doing 9 through 12. I mean, we're just talking about doing 9 through 12, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just wondering what that's going to do, what that could possibly do to our middle school splits. Yeah, let me be the one to bring that up.
No, you were just first. I was gonna bring it up next.
Oh, okay. What? Geraldine?
Glad you did it first.
All right.
So that's an unknown.
I know, it's
because
just-
we don't know what the new 9 through 12 lines would look like, and we don't know how they would articulate, if you will, with the 5 through 8 lines.
Okay.
I don't think that it would be our recommendation to go in there and throw open the 5 through 8 lines again. However, depending on whatever we're able to come up with in this scenario here, if we have 3 options that come before the board for your discussion and review and ultimate decision, if there's some gentle tweaks that need to happen as a result of that to make things work smoother, perhaps having the freedom to be able to make those might be welcome. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'd hate to have too many constraints put upon if the administration is going to go back and work through a number of scenarios and try to bring some forward, the more constraints that we have make our work a little bit more difficult.
Right.
that's a great question and point.
Oh,
And
it's-
I can tell you, I'm in favor of giving you whatever flexibility you need, whether it's tweaking something because of the middle school splits, how it works out, or you can, I would say have flexibility to do that and make a recommendation to us on what you think. The other one is, if you look at it and you see some of the comparability,
That's what I was gonna bring up.
I had a hunch.
You had a hunch. I know you had to.
The
I was gonna say, you all
comparability
had to know.
piece, I mean, if you see something, hey, we should probably tweak this. I mean, if you see a better way to make it work, bring it. That's my general view. And if that means that you need flexibility to tweak 5 through 8 as well, I mean, I can tell you, I'd be willing to give that. And I'm guessing that they would be too, just because it seems to make eminent sense.
Well,
We keep coming, it's you.
I mean, it does. The thought of it almost makes me want to throw up, right? But per FC Local and looking at those comparability numbers, I mean, I think it was, even whenever, Mike Martindale took the grandfathering out, right? And he showed us what it would be if it wasn't for that. And I think it was a 17% difference, right? Between Oakwood and Pecan Trail. Even throwing out, I mean, if everyone, went to where they're zoned for, there was still a 17% difference that year. How that happened, I don't know. I actually looked up what we did in the Boundary Adjustment Committee. And in that work, there was less than 5% difference whenever we drew those up. So I don't know how we ended up with, 17%.
Well, because you're relying on demographers to tell you the
Right,
future.
right.
And you know what, we've
That
been
was
in that,
huge
I know, but we've been in that situation before where, this isn't the first time it's happened, it's probably not gonna be the last, where we're given numbers and they don't play out for whatever reason. The community or the city or whoever doesn't see it like the demographer saw it, but we're doing the best we can with the numbers that we're given. So, you know, hindsight in this case is always 2020. Okay, so I don't think that it was the fault of anyone. I just think it's the reality of how you have to go about looking at numbers for the future, and that's very difficult to do.
Yeah, and I think that's worth taking a look at.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the policy, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we'd all talked about and what it is, and we can figure out what we want to do about it. But I would say that should be a piece of the analysis and figure out, okay, why did that happen? Why is it different than the assumptions we had? And what do we do to address it, if anything? And how does that fit into your overall work? I think that makes sense. Another thing I want to raise, I mean, we've talked about different numbers and how many kids. As I look at those things up there, it would be my hope that we, through a combination of the boundary adjustment, the examination of transfer policies or incentives, that we get enough capacity utilization, quite frankly, using the space we have, so that we don't have to do this again until we're ready to have a third high school. Because, I mean, the reality is this is hard, very hard on our community. And I know it's hard on us. And it takes a lot of energy that we could be spending elsewhere in terms of making our community great and building the kids and funneling into them in their programming. So that's part of, I think, what we should be trying to get. Any other thoughts?
Just a not very well thought out question. Well, no,
Okay, I've
You-
got a lot of that
it
tonight.
really, I'm full of them, always.
Well, your
not just
last one, you
tonight.
didn't make anybody mad. I thought
I
it was a
just-
great point.
No, we'll see what he's got later. You mentioned about, you know, if we were moving lines and incentivizing and transfers, and I'm just curious, have we thought that, okay, so this happens now, right? This spring, if we choose to do this, so people have over a year to figure that out, which is great. I like the idea of giving the incoming freshmen that choice, but if I was thinking about people who are freshmen now, but it's not very well thought out. It's not going to affect.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah, I was like, well, if they're going to end up going, could they go this year? But it doesn't matter. Never mind. But what if the Mr. Schaefer's incentives entice them?
Then they have that choice.
Do they have that choice in next year, or is it in 2 years?
I don't know that we have Mr. Schaefer's incentives, whatever
I'm
those are
just-
right now
I'm
in
just-
front
I'm
of
just
us.
picking on him.
We do have a
he's
transfer
handing out
policy.
Take the heat off me.
We do have transfer policies and processes that we go through, and there are kids that transfer both directions,
Sure.
almost in equal numbers,
Sure.
for a variety of reasons.
I see Mr. Martindale putting up the checkbook.
What time do we need to?
5 minutes, Chuck?
How do we feel about Doing the
we-
board operating procedures.
We can push that until next month. There's nothing on fire with that.
Okay. Well, I mean, it sounds to me, and again, tell me if you disagree with kind of what we've talked about. Elementary, going through that boundary adjustment process next fall.
Correct. Fall of 2018.
Fall of 2018, correct, after we have better information.
For implementation of fall of 2019.
Yes. Pursuing a boundary adjustment this spring to address capacity issues at the high school level, and telling you that you have flexibility to also look at 5 through 8 as needed to make it work. Whether that's tweaking comparability or capacity or middle school splits at the 5 through 8 level as well. Is
Certainly not a requirement to do that.
absolutely. I mean, from doing nothing to, yeah.
Yes. Preference of doing nothing.
Yeah, I think he has that preference as well. Is that,
But if we do not, well, if we do
well,
nothing,
yeah, well, and see what the numbers are, yeah, I mean, and again, yeah, when the options come forward, we'll see them, and then we get to address them.
Yeah, this isn't your last chance. Just, you'll get to see them again, and we'll be able to discuss it again. So,
So- I'm sorry.
no, I just want to make sure I mean, it is hard when you're a new board member to understand that there'll be plenty of opportunity there's no decision absolutely made tonight. It's
Yeah, that's
other than to bring forward something that we can discuss at the next meeting.
Ms. Harris, you said do the rezoning spring of 2018 with an implementation of fall of 2019?
I'd say as you presented it, I liked how that sounded. I don't know what you call it, pre-fathering, is a really good and creative option. So that we don't,
They're
missed
jump
that.
starting their new campus.
We're going to have to find a different term.
That's not a good one, but let's come up with a.
I don't know
jump
what you call
starting. Jump starting, that's.
jump starting, good. You marketing guys. I mean, so you need a motion and actual action to direct it?
That would be great if you'd like to.
Could I ask one final question? Hold on.
Absolutely.
This
you
one's
can.
not, so we're, this spring, to be presented to the board May? In,
So I guess what we would like to do is get together and come up with a timeline of a number of board workshops that we'd be needing to have over the spring. And my guess is it would be sometime in May, perhaps very early June. I don't know. We haven't sat down and looked at that. I think what would work if going through this process would be a number of meetings very quickly. So like once a week or maybe once every couple of weeks. So it's fresh on everybody's mind. It's fresh on the community's mind. And we come in here and have those conversations over the options that are brought to you and whatever direction you give us based on those options. So I imagine there will be a recursive process of y'all sending us back for more information and moving some stuff.
I think it's important that that we have a decision before June, because I don't want the community to feel like we made a decision once school's out.
I understand.
Good point.
we got some work to do.
I guess we're going to get all close and personal.
You need a motion?
Yes.
I move that.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. You clear on the motion? Okay. The motion and a second, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Anything else on that item?
And we'll pull item C2, and we'll put that on next month's agenda.
Okay, so we'll table item C2 until next month, and with that, we are adjourned for the workshop, and we will be back at 7.